Good evening, everyone. Having a quorum here for Ordinance Committee tonight, I'll call the meeting to order. I have with me Councilor Juan Anderson Burgos, I'm Councilor Linda Bacon, and Councilor Rebecca Lisi. And the meeting is called to order at 6:02, and today is January 8th. So we're having this meeting early tonight because we have a special city council meeting at 7, but just because of the technical rules relative to public hearings, we did the public notice for the drive-through for 6 o'clock, so we can take that up. However, because the other public hearings that are on the agenda were continued to January 8th at 6:30, we cannot take them up until 6:30. Just so if we have any gap, you understand why. But as the first order of business, I would entertain a motion to take up the minutes.
Second.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we had previous meeting minutes from September 11th, September 25th, and October 20th provided to us probably about a month ago now. And I'd entertain a motion relative to those.
Motion to receive and approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So those minutes are received and approved. I'll take a motion to take up item 2.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 2 is a public hearing for a special permit application submitted by Westfield Bank for installation of a drive-through ATM machine at 1650 Northampton Street, map 106, block 00, parcel 101. I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we are in the public hearing for the application for the drive-through portion of the bank proposal. So if someone from the bank would like to run through your application for us, that would be great.
Hi, my name is James Stoddard, representing Westfield Bank.
Is the mic
Is the
on?
microphone?
Oh, the mic's not on.
Can you just pull
There
that
it is.
button?
You got it.
Is that on?
Oh, yes.
Better?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
I'm Attorney James Donahue, representing Westfield Bank in connection with this application, as well as the next application that's currently been heard a number of times before your committee. This application is one for a drive-through ATM at the existing Westfield branch on Northampton Street. The drive-through proposed would be the reestablishment of a drive-through lane that has existed in the past as a drive-through teller with an actual individual teller serving the window, and that was closed a number of years ago, and now the bank is seeking to reestablish that drive-through, except to establish it as an automatic teller machine. The only change to the facility for the machine itself would be to place the machine on the existing infrastructure which is there, the utilities, electric wiring, all of that's necessary for the ATM to work is already in place and really only needs to be placed on the existing pedestal and reconnected to allow service to be made. As I stated in a previous hearing, and which we made part of the original of this application, the real reason that the bank is seeking to do this is that they have an existing ATM on site, but it is a walk-up ATM and requires customers to leave their car, walk to the bank building, enter the bank vestibule, and then transact their business on the machine. The problem with the way that is structured now is that this is the only real entrance to the bank where the ATM is. So if you're using the ATM, people who are going into the bank for service are going to be walking past you, and that creates some concerns about some privacy and whatnot with the users. The second issue is when the bank is closed, the ATM is the only facility there that's being used, and people have to get out of their car, use the ATM, and if it's in service by another customer, wait either in the vestibule or wait outside for the ATM to be, business to be transacted before they can do theirs. The concern with the bank has been that area in the past, over the past 3 or 4 years, has had, they've had a couple of attempted robberies and a robbery or two at the site. And that has created issues with the bank and concern for their employees and their customers. So the belief by the bank officials is that if the ATM is allowed to be converted to a drive-through ATM, customers will feel safer, they'll be more protected in that they will not have to leave their vehicle in order to transact any business that they have to do, number one. And number two, if the ATM is allowed to be transferred to a drive-through ATM, the bank can reconfigure the existing facility now to expand the window area to allow better visibility of people coming to the bank by the tellers and other bank personnel who are there to sort of alleviate the concern or potential concern that may be issues in the future with respect to the safety or operation of the facility. By way of history. With respect to the actual application that's been filed today, we submitted a site plan which shows all of the requirements that are mandated by the zoning ordinance with respect to drive-through ATM. It shows the location of the ATM, the drive-through lanes, the parking locations, the property lines, the proposed signage and striping of the parking facility and the exit to and from the location, all of which comply with the requirements of the ordinance. And then in addition, the ordinance requires that the bank submit, which it did, a traffic impact study which shows what the proposed impact of the change of the ATM from the walk-up to a drive-through would be. And using the peak hour of Friday evening from 4 to 5, the traffic study, Fuss and O'Neill, traffic engineers who did the study, determined that there would be approximately anywhere between approximately 20 additional trips that will be generated by this change during the peak hour. And so the additional traffic during other hours would be significantly less than the traffic during the peak hour. And their determination was that there would be no significant impact on the operation of the site, nor would there be any impact on any of the abutting roadways or the intersections that service the site as it stands. That traffic study was reviewed by the city engineering department. A report, I think, from the city engineer should be in your your file. We received a copy. He indicated that he had no reason or no objection to the findings made by Fuss and O'Neill with respect to the traffic study. And also in review of the site plan that was filed, the engineering department determined there didn't appear to be any issues with respect to the operation of the site, particularly because there were no changes to the site except the installation of the ATM machine on the existing pedestal that's there. I believe the planning department has submitted a letter to you just outlining their review of the proposal. And basically, we submitted a response to the planning department addressing the questions that they had and received no further objections to any of that. So sort of different from the last hearing that we had on the special permit that's coming up to the next hearing. The municipal departments have reviewed our filings and have found them to be, I believe, acceptable. There are no really any significant issues with the request that the bank is asking for this ATM to be installed.
Thank you. I just want to note for the record that we have correspondence dated November 13th that went to DGNR because originally the issue was split. And in that letter, the special permit application was reviewed relative to completeness, driveway width, vehicle queuing, and traffic impacts. And relative to the traffic, the the DPW is not aware of any traffic impacts created by the existing facility and concurs with the applicant's conclusion that addition of the drive-through will not create traffic issues on adjoining streets. The other matters that were addressed in the letter was submittal completeness. Now, this was November 13th, and that was requiring the submission of the lighting and drainage plans. And since there were not any proposed changes, they would be required if there were, based on what I'm reading here. The driveway width, as shown, exceeded the width specified in section 7.1.6.3 of the zoning ordinance, so no changes in the width are proposed or required. DPW is not aware of any problems created by the current driveway widths. Vehicle queuing, the proposed queue length appears to meet the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance, and potential conflicts with parked vehicles will be eliminated by the removal of 4 parking spaces in the queuing area. The DPW will defer to the planning department on the assessment of the impact of this change on minimum parking requirements for this facility. So those were the 4 areas addressed there. Then on December 18th, a letter was addressed to me as chair that the DPW had reviewed the traffic impact statement dated November 27th, which was received by the planning department on December 13th and forwarded to the DPW for review and comment. And we concur with the applicant's conclusion that addition of an ATM at this location will have little impact on traffic operations in the area, and that's signed by Robert Parent. What I'm not seeing in front of me is correspondence that I think you referred to from the planning department. Everything that I've had is from DPW. If you wish to give us a correspondence that I might for some reason be missing or got separated. It may be attached to something else.
The copy attached behind this is the letter from the planning department.
And your
Is that
response-
This was
extra?
the response. Huh?
Is this extra that we can keep?
I'm gonna give one to each of you.
Oh, okay, great, great. Thanks. I wasn't sure.
And as far as the completeness referred to in Mr. Parent's original letter, I think he was talking to the infrastructure such as water and sewer and utilities, which he noted, and I think correctly noted, none of those were being addressed because there were no additions or changes to the site that would require any addition or modification.
Right, and we may have to re-enter this at 6:30 also, because we have 2-piece thing going on here. Okay, so everybody has,
Can I ask a question?
sure, Counselor Lisi. Oh, and I would just like to note that Counselor Bartley and Counselor McGivern are in the chamber. Pardon?
Sullivan was here for a minute.
Is he here?
I think he went in the back. I have a question. Is on the existing pad, is the actual drive-up teller lane in use and active?
Yes,
It is, okay.
it's an additional drive-through site, and the non-used drive-through site is desired to be reestablished as a, but the actual manual teller window that exists now will remain in place.
Just want to make sure I understand what you just said. So there's 2 lanes, right?
Yes.
One lane is the chute with the canister, and that's active, and the other lane is just inactive, but it's set up the same way?
Inactive, and it's supposed to be the automatic ATM.
Okay.
So just to put into the record, the November 13th letter, and I'm going to read it into the record here. I may have to read it into the record at 6:30 on this also, because these are sort of blurred and blended in this process. But the planning folks did review this application. They had some remaining questions. They do say that there is a proposed service drive established existing, and the proposed plan appears to include design features which make maneuvering the site obvious. And the planning board reviewed this in November, received on November 5th. And I'm just looking through to see what the remaining questions are, and any member of the committee, feel free to jump in if you see something before I do. So a separate drive-through lane is proposed, and that's why we're having this hearing relative to the drive-through, to address that matter. And the whole plan addressed the circulation. Under buffer and setbacks, based on the site plan provided, it appears that a 6-foot stockade fence is proposed separating the ATM use from the residential use to the east. Is the proposed fencing sufficient? The existing drive-through lanes are pre-existing non-conforming structures, uses as constructed, and the applicant is before the city council for the alteration of a non-conforming structure, the addition of the ATM. And under that, any outdoor service facilities shall be a minimum of 100 feet from the property line of residential uses. That's such things as menu boards, speakers, except that facilities may be located up to 50 feet from a residentially used structure if screened from adjoining properties in the residence district by plant or other suitable material. And it refers to the traffic study, which has since been provided and reviewed, and I've read that into the record. And the other aspects of no changes was noted relative to lighting and drainage.
And just to note that the applicant in their response will not be using any speakers or menu boards.
Okay.
So that would bring them to the possibility of a 50-foot buffer.
Okay. And so in the final responses back to planning, the intended hours of the ATM would be the same as what was sought in the 24-hour as the existing one, only it will be a drive-through. 10B, that the drive-through lane should not impede the parking spaces. Access, as the plan shows, the removal of the 4 spaces. That the ATM lane should not impact pedestrian traffic, as the existing walk-up ATM would be removed, and new traffic flow marking should address any interior traffic flow concerns. You already addressed item 4, no speakers or menu boards. The traffic study we have already addressed. And the placing of the ATM we will be taking up in 10 minutes. Relative to the digital plan, it was provided on disk. And relative to striping, that it would be used by paint to make that clear. And so that completes the formal communication between the applicant and planning and the applicant and DPW. So are there any other questions relative to the application by members of the committee?
Yes.
Councilor Lisi?
Thank you. So can I just see this other document that was submitted, the one that?
This one?
Here.
The original one?
Yes, the original one. I'm not seeing something that has measurements on it. I mean, I guess, so is this the plan that you submitted? Yes, please.
Sure.
This is the original plan that was submitted for the non-conforming ATM.
Okay, and so I'm just looking to, I'm trying to understand what the distance between the fencing that you're proposing and the canopy is. Do we have that information?
Specifically, I think, but it's about 10 to 15 or 20 feet, maybe more from the building itself.
So the lamp post is 14 and a half feet from the house, and the ATM is 24 feet from the lamp post. So that means it's 38 and a half feet from the house. But I'm not clear about the fence.
How far it is from the fence?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's about 14 feet.
And so when we're talking about this 50-foot buffer, what is that in reference to? Because if in the drive-through world, normally we would be using a menu board and someone speaking to you to order your meal and proceed forward. If that item needs to be 50 feet away from, it has to have a 50-foot buffer, and the ATM is analogous to that board or window, why don't we see that distance here?
Well, I don't know why you don't see the distance there, but the issue...
Can you go to the microphone, please? Thanks. It's because of the type of use.
The 50-foot issue raised by the planning department is what your zoning ordinance requires of new construction. If we were going to establish a new drive-through facility, that would be the distance we would need.
Mm-hmm.
We are here
For the
under the
non-conforming.
next special permit
Right.
for the pre-existing use of the non-conforming building that's
Yep.
there and to use that site. Now, so no specific dimensions were made with respect to that because it really wasn't an issue from our perspective.
Okay.
To address some of the concerns that, and I'm sort of going into the other hearing a little bit.
Let's save that for
Okay.
6:30.
We've got 5
But
minutes.
that's the reason that the 50 feet is not addressed in the issue is that it really doesn't apply to our application because we're not looking to establish a new drive-through facility. And there is a difference from being a drive-through menu board, say at McDonald's, when I go up to get my fish and jig and fries, in that I speak into a microphone and I talk to them, they respond back, so there's sound coming from that facility.
Yep.
Here is the ATM. There's no voice communication. You insert your card, push your buttons as to what you need. The responses come up on the screen. You push your button to get the responses. So there's no sounds being generated by this proposed site. There would be conversation it exists now between a customer using the manual drive-through teller. There would be, hi, how are you? Happy New Year. Can I have 10s and change for my, whatever it is, whatever that response is. But that won't happen with this particular new activity that's being asked. This is all manual and punching the codes.
Thank you for that. That does clarify things. I do, however, I understand that we are talking about repurposing the pad, which is the non-conforming structure application. But I do believe that this is considered a new drive-through application because you're not currently using that other lane. It's out of service. So I do think that it is a new drive-through.
No, well, let me clarify that. It's new in the sense that it's not in use now. When I say new, it's a sense that the building is being constructed anew, that it's virgin land, there's nothing on it. We're putting up now a pillar or a pedestal to hold a machine. That would fall subject to the 50-foot requirement. But because this pedestal exists, we're not moving it, we're not changing it, we're just saying we want to use it now for the ATM, that we're looking for the special permit for pre-existing non-conforming building, and that's part of the building.
Okay. I'm gonna continue on, because I know that some of the concerns that have been raised by the neighbors have been about the sound, that perhaps not the ATM is making, but cars driving by at different hours of the day may be producing for the neighborhood. And what I see in the plans here is that there are essentially plans for constructing an acoustic wall. And what I understand from what's submitted here is that there's an angle at which the sound will travel above the fence, and that's what you're looking to create. But if you have a sense at all, one of the things that we had talked about at a previous meeting is, so the lane that's closest to the property is the lane that's being proposed for the ATM. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, repeat that?
The lane that's closest to the abutting property, where there's actual neighbors living as opposed to the cemetery, the lane that is closest to the neighbors is going to be the proposed drive-through lane for the ATM.
Correct.
Okay. Do you know from the information that you've gathered if the effectiveness of an acoustic fence is more effective when the car is closer to that acoustic fence, or if it's further from the acoustic fence?
Well, the report that was filed with the information that was filed with the non-conforming use, the fence that was being discussed in that hearing, that this issue had been raised in that hearing, the sound people that the bank retained to do the proposal, their report specifically says that it would be better to have the ATM machine closer to the fence to limit the sound, because as it bounces, it goes straight and hits the fence and then comes back. The further away you are, the more it's going to go up and over it. So that's in the material, that's in the other. I have a copy of that report that we can make part of this record if that's a concern.
It's here. I just want to make sure that I was understanding the plan correctly, because the neighbors have this concern with the sound. We want to make sure that we're addressing that issue. And there was also some talk about moving the ATM lane to where the teller lane is and the teller lane to where the ATM lane is. And so I just wanted to make sure that I understood, based on the information here, that it looks like you get more sound coverage with a car closer to the fence.
We had discussed that at a prior hearing on the non-conforming use special permit, and that's correct. The closer the ATM is to the fence, the better sound protection, that the way sound flows, that would keep it more on site if there was any sound at all. We disagree with the assumption being made by the abutters, by the way, that this will or is going to result in loud, disjunctive noises at all crazy hours for them. But this is really an ATM with not a lot of exterior sound that should be occurring.
Are you all set?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
we're in public hearing, so at this time, I'd like to invite anybody to come to the microphone to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application. This is on the drive-through. And when you come to the mic, please give your name and address.
Dave O'Brien, 104 St. James Avenue, the abutter to the east. And just to address some of what's been said here, I understand that the applicant has met all the requirements with regard to the planning board, and whatever applications you guys have accepted seem to be in order. The one thing that I think is missing here is common sense. I mean, if you were to see the site and the proposal for what they're going after, Juan, you were up there. Common sense would rule and say, this is crazy. This is the lane, the drive-through lane with the ATM is within about 6 or 8 feet of my house. Not of the border, but my house. And, okay, so maybe the audio engineers say that the fence is going to mitigate all the sound. But this is also, has two 88-year-olds living on the second floor of this house. And I would submit to the sound engineer that the closer you are to the fence, the more the sound is mitigated. That's correct. However, if it's a 6-foot fence, I can't understand how that would protect the second floor where the two 88-year-olds live. I would take exception to any of that. But I would encourage you to, if you have not done it, look at the site. Look at the dimensions from the actual traffic pattern and the boundary. It's within, I'm guessing here, 2 feet of the actual property line where cars pass by. That in and of itself is in my mind, crazy. But you guys will do what you'll do. I would only encourage you to use a little common sense and say that this is too close. It's absolutely too close.
Hi, Susan
Thank you.
O'Brien, 104 St. James Avenue. I am 62 years old, and I saw that bank go up. That lane has never been used, ever. It was built, but it has never been used. So this isn't putting something back in. It's never been there. This lane has never been used. The only thing that was ever used was the lane with the tube during business hours. We do hear conversation from that lane in our house in the summertime. I can hear the bank employee talking to the guy at the drive-up. I hear those conversations. I used to wake up as a teenager and hear them. They woke me up. So there is obviously sound. The lane has never been used, and I have been there my whole life to see it, so.
And our concern also is not so much at the peak traffic hours from 4 to 6 on Friday evening, but at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. when the young man in his big diesel truck gets out from the bar and decides he needs to go to the ATM and leaves his truck idling with loud thumping music at 2 or 3 in the morning. Those are my concerns, Counselor, really. I mean, it's not so much the peak traffic study.
Through the
We've been-
chair, please.
Pardon me?
Just speak through the chair.
Those are not my concerns. When it's daylight hours, my concerns are in the early hours of the morning. Just how disruptive is that going to be? And okay, so maybe it's not a lot of traffic, but if it's 1 car, 2 cars, 3 cars at that hour, that's a lot. That's a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak regarding this application for the drive-through? Well, I would just like to say a couple of words, and I'll open up to any other counselors who may have questions or comments. Following the last public hearing, I did go down to the site. I did take a look at how the drive-through is configured, how the fence is located, and looked at it to compare what the applicant was looking to do to mitigate noise and sound. I don't see in terms of the application that they're changing who might or might not be going into there, because they already have a 24-hour ATM. So people can be driving in there and idling and going to it now if they choose not to turn their vehicles off. But I guess my perception was if people can stay in their car, drive through to the ATM, they're actually going to be there a shorter amount of time than if they're going there and parking or leaving their car running and getting out and going to the ATM. So I did go and take a look. I try to do due diligence on these applications, and I would just note that the applicant also said that they would increase the fence height as allowed to 8 feet if we allow it. So that seemed that if the fence is higher with the acoustic qualities, that would help to protect the first floor or the second floor, because the cars will remain at the same level.
It's a different material.
Yeah, and,
It's not just the wood, it's a different material.
right, and the fence that I did see there was a wood fence, and this, we're understanding, has an acoustic quality to it to hopefully improve even what the abutters are hearing now from the other ATM. So those are just my comments. Is there anyone else who wishes? Counselor Sullivan?
Yep, thank you. And I sympathize with the neighbors there, but, you know, I live in a very quiet neighborhood, almost a dead end down in Jones Point. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, we have cars come down there with their radios blasting. We have people driving. I don't think there's a neighborhood in this town where you don't get that. So, you know, I don't think that's the kind of thing that should hold something up like this. That's, you know, that's code enforcement, and that's a job for the police, and it's going to happen no matter where you live. You're going to run into that. It's just not something I think that's uncommon, regardless of whether it's an ATM there or not. We're going to have these issues around town.
Thank you. Counselor Bartley?
I'd like to speak in favor of the applicant. I just want to just make a comment to the committee that you have pretty wide-ranging powers to impose any conditions that you want on a special permit. For example, you could consider, I think as we just heard, a higher fence height, up to 8 feet. I know that requires a variance from the building commissioner, but you could require that so long as the building commissioner approves it. You could also impose for example, a 1-year review about noise, because this is a brave new world. I think, as we just heard the abutter say, that her memory predates the actual bank. So the bank can make all sorts of plans as to the quality of the fence, the acoustic mitigation efforts, but we really don't know until the rubber hits the road, until there is something going on, and it's really only the abutter who can probably best discern what's happening. So this committee can impose a condition such as a review of the noise situation, or require a sound study by the applicant 1 year from now to see what kind of decibel levels are happening, to survey the neighborhood, to see if they're impacted thusly. So I would like to have you just think about your options and proceed from there. But I think in general, I think this is a reasonable concern, especially in regard to we just approved new drive-throughs at the former Yankee Peddler, and which is now a People's Bank. That's going to have brand new drive-throughs there. We also have a drive-through that is regularly utilized again on Northampton Street at United Bank, and we don't hear, at least I haven't heard, one issue relative to noise efforts from the abutters to United Bank. So I would hope that the committee would consider those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Bartley. Not seeing anyone else who wishes, Counselor Anderson Burgos.
I totally agree with Counselor Bartley. It's probably the probably the best thing I've heard tonight. As Mr. O'Brien being my constituent, I can't imagine, and I've met his parents who've worked really hard and are now retiring. So I'd like to bring them comfort by not having an ATM next to them where people are going to be driving at all sorts of hours. So I, for one, will not be voting for this. I can't imagine. I mean, as Councilor Sullivan stated, that it's common, but the way I look at it is, if we can prevent it, why not? I know it's common, but if we can prevent at least one incident from happening, in this case being an ATM where it's going to be accessible for 24 hours, why don't we step in and not allow that to happen? And I'm pro-business. I don't want you to think that at all. I'm just thinking, in the long run, for the residents, the people that I hear from.
And it's by no means am I, attacking Westfield Bank or the business itself. I'm thinking about my residents. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Leahy?
Yeah, thank you. I too share in the concern of the neighbor. Years ago, my parents lived on Columbus Ave, and we have this lovely pizza shop on the corner, ABC Pizza. Unfortunately, they're not there anymore because it was fantastic pizza. However, things have changed, and new people came in, and they weren't as concerned as the neighborhood as ABC Pizza was. And so, more noise came, more people hanging out in the parking lot. So to you guys, I do share your concern. I do want to make it known that my good colleague here, my friend Juan, does work for a bank. So I wonder if you're trying to shut down the competition here. I don't know that. I'm not saying he is. But would this be different if a Citizens Bank? Just kidding.
I would definitely, yeah.
But we also have the right for variance. We can go 8 feet. We can go in front of the Board of Appeals, ask for 10 feet. Why not? Let's try to make it work out for both parties. Thank you.
Thank you. So as everyone has been talking and putting forth ideas, I did write down a couple of notes. And I would note that based on feedback from the public and committee and council members, that we could stipulate the 8-foot acoustic fence to address the issue of the noise concerns. And we could put in the stipulation that if there are problematic, disturbing noise issues, that as part of the conditions, there would be an opportunity to come before here and review the special permit in a year to see if the steps to mitigate that are in the application are or aren't being effective. We could put in an opportunity for that. I think the applicant is trying to mitigate the noise concerns, and I think actually it may help the regular ATM noise that's being heard. So those are options. But if there, at this point, is no further information to come before the committee relative to the drive-through, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing because we can have our discussion relative to any recommendation that we might make, unless somebody feels there's actual information we don't have at this time.
No, I would even motion to open the installation of the ATM
Okay.
public hearing.
Okay, so,
Give people a chance to
so if-
speak one more time
so
and
if
then
we-
wrap up both public hearings.
so, okay, so that'd be a motion to take up item 3 and reopen the public hearing?
Yes.
All in favor? Aye. So item 3 is the special permit application from Westfield Bank for installation of the ATM, the automatic teller machine, at 1650 Northampton Street, which we clarified was the non-conforming use. But I mean, to stay clear, we have to treat these separately. And so my question to the committee is there information we need relative to the drive-through? If no, we should really close that hearing.
Yep. So motion to close the public hearing for the drive-through special permit.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Before you go, I have a draft decision that I would like to submit, just for consideration.
For,
Contains the requirements of the statute and what needs to be done. A suggestion. I'd like to
it's,
submit. Before you close the public hearing, so I get it.
for this, for item 3, yes.
For what it's worth, it's our proposed language.
Yeah.
Okay, so, all right, I wasn't clear if you were referring to the drive-through or the non-conforming structure. Okay, we're open in the non-conforming structure, so we can take this in under that.
Motion to receive the proposed findings from Westfield Bank special permit drive-through ATM.
All in favor?
Aye. And then motion to allow anyone else from the public to speak on this item.
Yes, we've opened the public hearing, so if there's any further comments in favor or against the non-conforming use for the placement of the ATM.
So,
Not seeing any.
motion to close the public hearing for the installation of the ATM at 1650 Northampton Street.
Do I have a,
Second.
You're going to close the public hearing on this? I do have
Oh. Yeah, you have to go on the microphone, sorry.
I do have a proposed finding just to submit for consideration.
this that you,
No, but that's for the
The other.
drive-through ATM. This is for the non-conforming special permit.
okay.
If you-
That's what I was trying to ask him before.
It's different, though.
It is, but that's what I was trying to clarify. Do you want to make a motion
Yeah.
on receiving?
Motion that we receive the proposed findings for the pre-existing non-conforming structure for 1650 Northampton Street.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
But there's nothing new in these that we haven't already discussed in the public hearing, right? This is just a summary?
Yes.
Is there, I'm just asking, is there new information in either of these, or are they simply a summary of what has already come forth in the public hearing?
It's not really a summary. It would be, if you were reviewing and making a finding up or down on a decision, that's a suggested finding in favor of each of the applications that are
But it is not
filed.
new information pertaining
it's
to
no,
the application?
no.
Okay, I
No
just wanted
new
to clarify
information.
that it's material for us to use, to look at, to decide, but it is not new information on the application. Okay. Okay, thank you. So we have a motion to close this public hearing?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to approve the drive-through special permit, putting the conditions that were spoken about previously, that we require an 8-foot acoustic fence, and that we review the special permit in 1 year.
Relative to any noise issues.
Yeah, and the other thing that I want to just document here is that there are no landscaping improvements that are being made currently, and that a review of the noise issues may require landscaping improvements.
May. All right, so we don't have a second, I can second it. So I will second that motion. And are there any other conditions that anybody would like to place on the special permit? So noting the motion to approve with the 2 noted conditions, I'll second the motion, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So 2-1, it will go to city council at the next meeting for the consideration of the council and full vote of the council on each application.
Motion to approve the installation of an ATM, which is the non-conforming structure, special permit.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 2-1 on item 2 and 2-1 on item 3. Each will go to the city council at the next full meeting for consideration and vote by the council. Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry?
That'll be the 15th.
On the 15th. Thank you for coming down, everyone.
Motion to take up item number 4 and open the public hearing for the
To
zone.
continue.
Continue the public hearing.
Second.
Go ahead.
All in favor? Aye. I'm
Aye.
sorry. Item 4 is the public hearing for the zone change application submitted by Tom Adamczyk, yeah, for property on 15 Holy Family Road, map 117, block 00, parcel 019, from current zone R-1A to proposed zone RM20. So this is a continuation of the first hearing. We took in public comment. I have at least received feedback from a couple of constituents relative
here.
to it.
Is this the,
was buried. Did you want it, just to have it? I think we came up with the correct answer.
It looks like it's probably about 10 feet. Because this is 12 by 20. But it gets cut off here.
Okay, all right, so we are in our public hearing, and if the applicant would like to update us on the status and any questions that we left you with last time, how about if we start there?
Absolutely, thank you. Good evening for the record. Good evening, councilors. I'm Rob Levesque from R. Levesque Associates. Here with me this evening are the Adamczyk brothers. They're the proponents for the proposed zone change at 15 Holy Family Road here in Holyoke. For the members of the committee that I don't believe were here last time, this is a proposal for a zone change to RM20. RM20 is a multifamily zoning district within the city that allows for a reasonable density of housing and would allow us to do on this particular property approximately 100 market rate housing units. They would. We have already worked on some concepts. We anticipate that we would be able to execute, assuming that we were granted a zone change, would be able to execute approximately 100 units. Since our last meeting, what we did is we went to the planning board, actually as recently as about an hour ago, and maybe a little bit less. We attended the planning board meeting for a recommendation from the planning board associated with the zone change. We did receive a unanimous positive recommendation from the planning board related to the zone change at about 5:45. So with that, it's a fairly straightforward project. It would be a multifamily project, 3 buildings, 3 stories. We would be required to go through site plan approval should we be granted the special permit. The surrounding properties are somewhat similar in nature. There are a couple multifamily projects directly adjacent to the subject property. Again, for the record, our property is located right here where this blue outline is. This is Tokeniki right here. This is another color, but this is also part of the Tokeniki village there. And then we have the school and the Sisters of Providence own a property here. Davonshire is here, and I believe this is the former, the vacant building. I forget the name of it. It's Geriatric Authority. Thank you very much. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you have or that I missed from the last time. I can go back.
I'm going to ask a
Councilor Lisi?
So in the RM20 zone, can you build by right up to 3 stories, and what's the height at 3 stories that you'll be building to?
This sketch may be helpful on what we're thinking. It'll give you a better feel for how the site would work out. But yes, it would be a by right filing with the planning board. It is a permitted use in that zoning district. We would anticipate that a traffic study would be required. The units themselves would need to be fully designed and a full site plan obviously provided. But this layout that we show here and the sketch that you saw in the previous slide, that is all based on the current zoning based on the RM20 zoning.
And do you know offhand what 3 stories is in terms of the height that's allowed in that RM20 zone?
Yes, I do. If you give me a minute, maybe go to the next question. I can look while you're.
Sure, thanks.
What I would like to do is offer the opportunity for any members of the public to speak in favor or in opposition of this zone change. If you wish to speak on this, please come to the microphone, give your name and address. I would note that I have received communication from Mary Hurley on 72 Lower Westfield Road in opposition, and from Michael Clark at 68 Lower Westfield Road in opposition, mostly citing traffic concerns.
Hello.
Hi.
Speaking of Mary Hurley, I am Mary Hurley,
she is in the flesh.
Lower Westfield Road, 72 Lower Westfield Road. So my property abuts the intersection on the corner of Holy Family and Lower Westfield Road. We are 0.2 miles from the proposed property. What I just heard confused me because traffic analysis, traffic study, that's one question that I have. It said that a traffic analysis was conducted. So I'm not sure if traffic study versus traffic analysis is the same or different. And the most affected intersection that would come out of this would be the corner of Lower Westfield Road and Holy Family Road. My other concern is obviously traffic. Questions regarding market rates. What is the market rate that you're seeking? Are you seeking a higher end, such as Devonshire, or are you seeking the lower end, as far as any kind of subsidized housing, such as parts of Tokeniki, parts of Farnham? I know the lower ends are more co-op and owned by those residents in that community. I have the amount of people living units at Devonshire is 180. So if you're talking another 100 units, that average of 1.5, possibly 2 to 3, you're increasing an average of 200 to 300 more people, which would be an average possibly 1 to 2 cars per unit. That's an additional 400, possibly 200 to 400 cars. And if anyone's not familiar with that area, to come out of there, you would either take a right towards Tokeniki, heading north, or take a left, heading south on Holy Family. That amount of traffic is insane. Is there a need for this housing in this area? We have such a densely populated area of housing already. My other concern is how many jobs it'll bring. What's the pros and cons of that? Who is going to own it? Which property company is going to run it? Who is going to do background checks on the tenants? What if in a year it falls through, it doesn't work out, it's half built, company goes bankrupt, hypothetically, what happens? We still have the Holyoke Geriatric Center that is sitting there vacant. No one has proposed to do anything with that. To my knowledge, there was a bidding process, which I don't have the results of that, so I don't know. Will that impact anyone potentially looking into purchasing the geriatric center? And as far as any, traffic results, I would be curious to know at what time they were done, when they were done, impact of busing, pedestrians, increase in school-age children. There's no sidewalks in that area whatsoever on Holy Family Road. I frequently, every morning, see students walking, fog, dark, no sidewalks, school buses coming up and down the street. Again, it all comes to traffic, which eventually growth is great, but what is the outcome of this growth? What is it going to bring to this area, the need for more housing, when we already have so much housing in that area? If it's market rate, if it's going to be low income, statistics in Holyoke, I have a list here from mass.gov. This is as of September 2017. Holyoke, out of every city in Massachusetts, has the highest at 19.9% of subsidized housing inventory. More than Boston, more than Springfield, Holyoke. It's too dense of an area with limited access, without the benefit. Is it going to bring jobs to the city? Perhaps a couple. Is it going to entice people to move here because they want to work somewhere? Where is that information? It's not a, if you build it, we will come situation again. Again, you say we can't get rid of the noise. We can't get rid of the noise. It's a thing, but it's becoming so acceptable to everyone, we just deal with it. Well, someone's got to at some point say we are done with this. Increasing traffic by that much is only going to enhance the noise, enhance the traffic, for what? It's not like they're building a Bradley Airport and everyone's going to go to work there. It's not going to happen. So those are my questions. Traffic study, impact on the neighborhood. Is this a wing it and we'll see? We don't know. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this application? Then I'll give the applicant an opportunity to answer some of those questions.
Excuse me, Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. John Wozolowski, Sisters of Providence, 5 Gamlet Street. I noticed that the question didn't get answered as to the height of the buildings. That's one of our curiosity. Second, the proposed layout also has a very nice center look to it, open space, but there's very little landscaping or be it sidewalks or other options on the outside, which makes it look almost industrial if you're driving around that. So there's issues like that as to once we get into the construction stage that I think are very worthwhile, or actual construction approval stage worthwhile to address.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make it clear to folks who are concerned about the details of the project itself, that at this stage of consideration, all we really are doing is looking at whether it would be allowed by zoning. The details of the traffic study, which is in much greater detail than a traffic plan relative to this application, those would happen should the city council approve the zone change, and would happen under the planning process and the site plan review, just to be clear. And I'm sure whenever applicants come, they have intentions about what they will do, but all those details really get hammered out with the planning board and staff, okay? So I don't want to mislead folks. Counselor McGee?
We have to
Open?
recess in order to proceed to the next meeting, which is now 2 minutes over.
Yes, but we are in good time.
I know, I'm just giving a heads up.
And we're well within the normal window. So if you
Be brief.
could, yes.
Okay.
That would be
Okay,
great.
thank you. So I think I got all the questions from the lady. So first, we've done a trip generation analysis. We have not done a traffic study. As part of the site plan approval application, a traffic study is required to study the surrounding intersections in more detail. And actually, it's a very specific requirement. It lays out all the requirements that the traffic engineer would have to go through in relationship to this project. So this is, again, a request for a zoning map amendment. Should the zoning map amendment be granted, there is a full site plan approval process. A lot of the other questions and the details from the gentleman related to the perimeter buffering and landscaping is also very pertinent and a good question, but absolutely would be addressed at the planning board level. This is a very basic sketch that you see here just to lay out the units, just to tell you how they would generally fit from geometric point of view. As far as the detail, there would be a significant amount of detail, landscape plans. There's probably a 12-sheet set that gets typically submitted to the planning department. So certainly would be addressed at the planning board, both the traffic and the detailed site plans. As far as the units themselves, they would be comparable to Devonshire. We understand, and we did have a meeting with the folks from Devonshire, and we understand that everyone's pretty happy with that location. Our understanding is that there are only 2 communities similar to that in Western Massachusetts that people are finding. One is on the border of Long Meadow and Enfield, and the other one is here at Devonshire. And they are very happy with the fact that they have washer and dryers in their units. They're very happy, and a suggestion from the planning board is to explore the potential for covered parking or secured parking, which we will certainly look into. That said, these will be market rate. I would say, as far as people looking at units, these will be high-end units because they'll be brand new. They'll have the washer and dryers. And that's the market we're going for. The developer that is pursuing this is not a low-income developer. The numbers don't work without subsidies to do low income, and that's not what their model is. That doesn't work for them. So what we're doing is market rate. We do anticipate.
Can you explain what market rate means for
I'm
people?
sorry. There's no subsidies.
It's median income.
I'm sorry.
It's at a median.
Median income. So yeah, exactly.
Could you tell us the allowed height? Under RM20.
I apologize, I could not find that. I do have the section that has all the area and the setbacks, but the height is not shown there. We don't anticipate that this would be over 35, 36 feet. Even if you went 12 foot per story, you'd be at a 36-foot height, but we will certainly not exceed the height allowed within the zoning district, and I can confirm that for you.
No variance, no height variance.
No relief request will be requested on the height. As far as jobs, most of this is construction jobs. The construction jobs would consist of, well, I guess I probably don't have to explain that, but as far as maintenance and management, there will be probably a few jobs created by this project, ongoing jobs, but the other jobs would just be temporary in nature. There'd be construction. And then the impact to the neighborhood, we'll be looking at that closely. We don't anticipate that we're going to have any level of service changes at any of the surrounding intersections because of the traffic generated from this project. It is a pretty, the area is accommodated pretty well by the surrounding infrastructure, both sewer, water, roadways. All of that is fairly adequate in this particular location. It's a great location right off 91, easy to get to if you're working in the area. And then I think I covered everything for the lady in the audience and John as well.
Thank you. While the hearing is still open, I would just like to read into the record, we were handed a letter from planning tonight, dated today. It says, please, and this is a recommendation regarding the R1A to RM20 for 15 Holy Family Road. Dear Councilor Vacan, please be advised that at its January 8th, 2019 meeting, the Holyoke Planning Board discussed the above referenced zone change request. After consideration of all information and testimony presented during the public hearing, the board voted 4-0 to recommend to the Ordinance Committee of the City Council that the zoning map change request be approved. The board found that the proposed zone change was appropriate as the new residential zone for this parcel will be compatible with the surrounding zoning landscape and allow for productive use of this large parcel, 7.12 acres, while also allowing for uses congruent with the proximal built environment. The board noted that there was no public opposition to the zone change. If you have any question regarding this decision, please feel free to contact me. And I would just note that we did note 2 objections in the public hearing process here in front of this committee pertaining mostly to traffic concerns. So not seeing anyone else who wishes to speak or no further questions, I'll accept a motion.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion that the zone change from R1A to RM20 be approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This will be sent to the City Council for full vote at our next meeting on the 15th. So I'll accept one more motion.
Motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Keep that with the